So I've kind of always presumed that I'm an introvert.
Welcome back to Carter's in the Car at Night.
Hello.
When I first met Jason, I thought he was a real extrovert. He was life and soul of the party, dancing with me. He was just very funny and just hilarious to be with and very loud, to be honest. And then suddenly he changed and became like this quiet, withdrawn kind of guy, especially when we went to church. It was like, yeah, I'm not really here. This kind of very silent guy. So yeah, and that was a bit random for me. And recently, in the last few months, suddenly I've started to see his extrovert side again, which has been fun. It's good to get a happy balance. But a big thing has been the sort of discussion as to whether he is an introvert or an extrovert, or both, yeah, or even where all those things come from, and do they even matter? So over to you, Jay.
Well, the thing is, because I wear bright clothes, I'm quite comfortable being alone on stage in front of lots of people. I can be in a party and be very quiet, or I can be at a party and be very loud. I can flip between the two very easily.
Yeah.
I'm definitely someone that needs my own space and quiet to get my energy back. I need silence. I need to be alone to hear my thoughts, to understand what's going on with myself. But I do get my energy from people as well, so it's a very confusing thing. But to shed some light on that, my background is quite unusual because I was adopted, and so my birth family, and I've met my birth parents, are both very outgoing, colourful, adventurous, I would say bordering on crazy people.
Classic extroverts.
My adopted family are very quiet, reserved, in a way the opposite. So I grew up in an environment which was very quiet, and I learned to love it because it's very peaceful. So I'm often seeking peace. Seeking peace in myself, seeking peace in others, seeking peace in situations. And that involves a lot of listening. So maybe what I have is something interesting and useful, because it means I can be a person who takes the back seat. I can sit and listen without feeling the need to contribute or the pressure to contribute, or I can be the person that leads. So it's a very unusual set of skills, if you like. So I've kind of always presumed that I'm an introvert. Even I can be on stage with lots of people. My music is very reflective, and I go into an introspective space on stage with regards to my persona and when I'm playing the guitar. But when I'm telling stories, it's the opposite. So I'm telling stories about my travels, so I'm very extrovert, I'm very funny. And so I think maybe in that situation, it's also very interesting and also gives a lot to, what I'm bringing. And I've never found it necessary to define whether I'm an introvert or an extrovert. But sometimes it's interesting to look at it and see what you are. And I'd probably describe myself as an ambivert, which is someone in the middle, but I'm not really in the middle either. I'm kind of either one or the other.
Yeah. But I think early on in our relationship, you were very staunch about the fact that you were an introvert, and it used to kind of irritate me, because you certainly weren't when I met you.
Yeah, I was probably like, I'm an introvert, and I was probably shouting about it.
Yeah, you were. It was really annoying.
Yeah.
And also an interesting thing was that someone that I was close to and knew Jason just a little bit, but in the beginning, he got to know him better later on, was a pastor of our church, who said to me once that Jason was the most introverted person he'd ever met. And it made me quite angry, because it's just not true. And yet Jason was giving this this air of introvertness to people, particularly people in church, which I found very odd, because yes, I think it's amazing and beautiful when someone can find that space of peace. And I think that Jason's right. There's been a very important part of his development, because I mean, if he'd like become the extrovert sort of crazy person that he describes his birth parents to be, then his life would have been, well, kind of hell, really. Possibly. Or it might have been amazing, I don't know. But certainly he wouldn't have had the peace that he knows, and he's also brought lots of peace into my life. So my opinion is actually that I think Jason is genetically an extrovert who, from his social influences, his upbringing, has adopted a persona in many ways of an introvert, but sometimes his extrovert nature shines through. So I think it's important that we don't suppress who we're supposed to be, that we can take it all and take what we want actually from it.
Going back to the church thing, one of the things that I need in that environment is to listen. So I crave that peace and listening in a church environment.
Yeah.
And I think you struggle with that.
Oh, I mean, I get a lot of peace and listening time with God, and I love to listen to God, and I hear God very clearly in church. But I don't need it to be silent or quiet to hear God. I think God speaks to us all in different ways, and God has spoken to me in so many different ways, in visions, in dreams, with a big loud voice, obviously through the Bible. And I know that God's also spoken to you in times when you didn't feel that you could hear God or listen to God because it wasn't quiet, and yet you've heard from God in those times. So,
but in those times, I was actually very quiet myself.
Yeah.
But it's like when we have conversations with people, one to listen to someone, one must have to be quiet.
That's true.
It's just the same thing, right?
So it's a good job you did have that upbringing, because you learned how to do that.
Yeah. I think growing up, I really, I love nature. I grew up in Cornwall, Portsmouth and Cornwall. Those times in Cornwall, cycling through country lanes and sitting on deserted beaches, it was really important for me to actually listen. It was a normal thing. And moving to London when I was 19 was a big shock because it was very noisy. And I found it overwhelming because I was used to peace and quiet,
But you love those cities now. You're the one that sort of like misses the city. And I'm the opposite.
I do. I do miss that stimulation of possibility of big cities. I'm talking about cosmopolitan cities, capital cities, big cities. I miss that air of possibility.
But you always want to be where the people are, as far as I'm aware.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I lived in Finland for 7 years, very quiet place, and for 4 years of that I lived in the middle of nowhere, in a very small, quiet community in the forest. So I also craved that, but at that time I was touring the world with music, and I needed that peace and quiet when I came home, so I was giving.
Yeah.
Home needed to be silent.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so it's an interesting one.
And you are an extrovert.
Well, you see, I don't know, because I've always thought I was an extrovert until you talked about it with me. I mean, I've always assumed I'm an extrovert because I'm quite loud, I'm confident, and I like to be I find it easy to go up and talk to anyone. But on the other hand, I hate the sort of party atmosphere. I don't like it. I just feel out of place.
I love that.
I just rather be like quiet, sit, I don't know, just talk to one person in the corner. That's me. Or I like to dance. So if it's a dancing opportunity, I love to dance. But if it's not, if it's just like loudness, I hate it with a passion. I can't even bear to hear all these voices talking. I just can't make any sense of it. So yeah, so in that way, maybe sometimes I'm more of an introvert. But I certainly wouldn't describe myself as an introvert.
Yeah.
I also think it's a danger when you label someone.
Yeah.
I think to label anyone is not really healthy.
So let's get some petrol, shall we?
Yeah, here we are. Mumtaz, Jayed or Diesel?
Yeah, let's not put diesel in this car, shall we? Let's put some Jayed in it.
Hi, sir.
How are you?
I'm fine, sir.
Good, thank you. Can I have Jayed, please?
Full.
Why not? Thing is, would an introvert do a thing called carter in the car?
No.
No, not really.
Would you like put yourself out there like that? If you're an introvert? No way.
But maybe I'm an introvert, but because of the need of wanting to connect with people and tell stories and hear stories, I've developed the skills to do that.
But introverts don't have that need.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
How do you know?
Go and ask some other introverts.
Yeah, so the introvert extrovert conversation. I think in leaders, especially political leaders, I think it takes an extrovert to lead a country. And we've seen various leaders in the UK, and the most memorable ones are extroverts.
Yeah, and the most boring ones are introverts.
I got a funny story about that. So I was playing at Cheltenham Literary Festival.
Literary.
Okay, I'll start again. I was playing at Cheltenham Literary Festival with a poet called Jasper Holmes, an old friend of mine,
Okay.
way back in the 90s. And John Major had just, not retired, but Tony Blair had just come into power, so John Major was now not the Prime Minister, and had written a book about his time as Prime Minister. So we were in the artist's bar, and I saw this poster, and it said, tonight John Major will, be an evening with John Major talking about his book. And it was very loud in the bar, so we had to talk very loud to be heard. And I said to my friend Jasper, "Hey Jasper, John Major, what do you think of him? Really quiet, sort of introspective character who with no kind of flair." But I said it really loud, and John Major was standing right next to me. And he looked around and he said, "Yes, I've heard that before." And I'm so sorry, Sir John Major. And that was that. Successful leaders somehow need to convince people of their leadership. And that takes social skills, enigma, charisma, and of course those are the qualities of extroverts, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think if there's ever been a leader of a country or a nation that's been an introvert.
But the thing is, I think if you have someone who is an amazing leader, then they will demonstrate all those qualities. In which case, even if they were, if you like, genetically an introvert, you wouldn't know.
Right.
In the same way as like if someone sort of just sees you doing your thing and like carter in the car,
Yeah.
they don't know you deeply. So, and actually, do they need to?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, here's a question then. So after concerts, I've wanted to make connection with the audience afterwards, and I wanted to experience the journey they'd been on, but I had no energy left to actually interact with them coherently. And so I was selling CDs and talking to people, but all I wanted to do was get back to my hotel room and be quiet. And yet I've been to concerts, and one great example is Tommy Emmanuel, fabulous musician, solo guitarist, Australian guy, amazing person and musician in so many ways. He'll do a 2-hour concert, and then he'll do another 2-hour concert with his guitar in the bar and talk to everybody, because you can see that he gets his energy from doing that. And Prince was another great example. Prince was famous for playing a 3-hour show and then a 4-hour after party. And yet Prince often appeared to be extremely introspective in interviews. He hardly ever gave interviews. Now that was probably because he wanted to maintain some kind of mystery around his character, but still, it's very interesting, the conversation.
Yeah. I think everybody's different, aren't they? And I think there's so many aspects which go into making us who we are by the time we're adults.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't know what Prince's story is, but we do know your story.
Yeah.
So I think if if you grow up and every day you have a certain experience which is positive, then you put store in that.
Yeah.
And you need that. It's
Yeah.
like if, every day we grow up and we have words of encouragement from our parents.
Yeah.
And we're told, yeah, you're going to be great, you're doing really well, and we love you. And then suddenly you're in a place like university or something, and you're away from your parents and you're not encouraged at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have anyone around you sort of like supporting you, then you need that. You can't live without it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the same.
Yeah. But I think it also calls into question the issue of security.
Yeah.
And so some people are extroverts and loud because they feel very uncomfortable with silence.
Yeah.
And I've been in social situations where it's really clear that some people find it difficult to be quiet.
Mm.
Whereas Finnish people, it's in their inherent nature to be quiet. So I've never met a Finnish person that has the need to speak for the sake of speaking.
True.
And yet you can find Finnish extroverts, but they will have that quality.
Mm.
So it's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting. So cultural and socio influences
Yeah.
are always as important as genetic, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes that your genetic impulses can be suppressed,
Yeah.
and that's not always a good thing.
No.
I think that's what happened to you.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating.
What do you think about me?
I think you're an extrovert.
So you think I'm an extrovert?
Yeah.
And how do you explain it that I hate talking to people on the phone, and
I can't explain that.
I won't call people. It's like just now Jason was like, just call up the cafe and make sure that they don't close before we get there, so we get our little balls of deliciousness. But I didn't want to. I felt shy. I don't like it. I don't like talking on the phone. I feel like if I can't see the person, I can't read their thoughts. Like I don't know what they're thinking. It's just weird.
I think that's another subject altogether.
And also, but what about the fact that I don't like parties really?
Yeah, that's another weird thing, right?
There's just too many people. It's too loud. It's too noisy. You can't think.
But am I right in saying, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this publicly, but I think you've struggled with feeling comfortable alone, right? So being quiet by yourself. You've often filled your life with stuff
Yeah.
for various reasons, which we don't need to go into. But so you often filled your life with activities and things that keep your energy up.
Yeah. So in a sense, I chose to become an extrovert because to be quiet reminded me of things that I didn't want to experience. So in a sense, it was like an extrovert lifestyle was reactionary.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, to a certain extent, you can change and dictate your personality.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have a choice. It's like, you know, you at the end of the day, you have a choice to follow a certain path,
Yeah.
and you can't just say, oh well, that's the way I'm made.
Mm.
I mean, you could say, okay, maybe you're a mean person. You can't just say that's the way I'm made. God didn't make you to be mean. Okay, you can change, and it's the same with any aspect of your personality. If you don't like it, you can change it.
So thanks for listening. We're always interested in your comments. So please write comments about what you think about the introvert extrovert thing or anything else.
Yeah.
Please subscribe, spread the word, and we'll see you next week or next time or even tomorrow.
Yeah, even tomorrow.
So Carter in the car signing off.
Over and out.